everybody, welcome to our second workshop. My name's Garrett. I'm the founder of Ambition in Motion. I'm so happy, I'm so excited, I'm so grateful to have you here for our second workshop. I am pumped for you to experience our guest speaker later on this evening. But before we get started, I want to touch up on a couple of quick points. So you are starting your mentor relationship. That is awesome. Hopefully you've had your first conversation. I'd love to learn about it. Post maybe some of the key talking points that you've had for your first meeting in the comment section. Would love to learn about how that first meeting has gone. But yeah, this workshop's all about how to network in a genuine way and really make the most out of it. This workshop should be about an hour long. As a reminder, I'm going to ask you 3 questions during the duration of this workshop. Once we have asked those questions, I'll expect you to answer them. That's how you get credit for participating and being here at the workshops. I'm really excited for you to experience our guest speaker tonight. I'm really excited to dive into this. Now, this is what's really key. I mean, genuine networking is such a pivotal component to building rapport, to getting job offers, to getting promotions. Really, if you can hone this skill, if you can hone this ability, you will be set professionally, because ultimately, at the end of the day, your hard skills, that being your ability to crunch numbers, to do some form of engineering, to do some form of science, like all those things are pretty good. They're very easy to measure. So it's very clear whether or not you are better or worse than somebody on a hard skill. But your soft skills are much more difficult to measure. But those soft skills are really what's going to set you apart. I mean, as they say, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. And this is the workshop about how you can know more people and have a stronger bond with them, because then it goes to your reputation. Because if you have a reputation for treating people like garbage, you're not going to have a great reputation. People are going to want to help connect you with other people. If you come in with low energy, if you come in with a bad state, if you come in talking trash about other people, you're not going to put yourself in a good position. And so I want to be very clear. When it comes to networking, when it comes to building a relationship, it is not all about the transaction. If you're coming into a networking situation, you're thinking to yourself, what is in it for me? You are not going to have a positive outcome. I promise you on that. I really want to be clear. It's not all about landing the job or the internship. Sometimes it's about building the relationship and then playing the long game, because ultimately that may turn into an opportunity because they built a rapport with you. But if you burn them, or if you make them feel like you are using them to get to a location that you would like to be, they can smell that on you. They can smell it from a mile away. And that is not great. As they say, desperation reeks. You do not want to be desperate. You don't want to be perceived as someone that's a user or a taker. You want to be a giver. You want to be someone who gives energy to relationships. The first place to start is being genuine with how you talk to people and how you build rapport with people. Now, this is something we talked about last time, but it is so important, and that is the 3 keys to success in this program. That is honing your strategy, your story, and your state. As we've said before, your state is most important. So physically, how are you? Physically, what is going on with your world? Physically, I don't care what is happening. If you recently broke up with your significant other, if your dog just died, if you got some bad news, I don't care what's going on. If you get up, if you shake it out, if you let it loose, you will get yourself into a positive state. So I want to challenge you to do that right now. I want you to get up, and I want you to shake it loose. I want you to scream at the top of your lungs. Just go, yeah, just let it out, let it loose, let it go. Because what you're doing is you're releasing blood to your brain. You're releasing endorphins. You're getting yourself into a state conducive for retaining information. If you're just sitting there on a couch or in a chair in a slumped over position, your likelihood of retaining any of the information we talk about tonight is severely diminished. But if you come in standing up, moving around, getting your blood flowing, you are much more likely to retain this information. Have you ever found it difficult in a classroom setting to remember what your professor says if you've been sitting for 3 hours? That's why 3-hour lectures really struggle to work. They're not very effective because people are not moving around. Your brain needs blood to retain information. So get up, get moving, get out, get loose. Now, the second key is your story. What is the story you tell yourself for why you will or will not be successful? I promise you right now, you will achieve up to the goals that you set for yourself in life and no higher. So you might as well shoot for the stars and land on the moon than shoot for the moon and end up in nowhere. Because if you are not focused about where you want to be, or really having a big, hairy, crazy, audacious goal for yourself, what are you doing? Like, are you just saying to yourself, like, I'm cool with winding up short, with, settling down and just settling for everything in my life? If that's the case, this program's not for you. I can tell you that right now. This program's not for you if you're trying to settle. But if you're someone that wants to go for it, if you want to go big, if you want to go out there, for the opportunities that you want to see in your life, this program is absolutely for you. Let this program be a springboard. Let your mentor be a Sherpa that's guiding you up this mountain of life and success and help you get to where you want to be. This is someone who wants to guide you, that wants to help you. They wouldn't have signed up for this program if they weren't interested in seeing you succeed. So I want to be very clear with you. What is the story for why you will be successful? Understand that, hone it, be prepared. In fact, I would challenge you to write this down. Write it on a piece of paper. It's more likely to stick in your mind if you write it on a piece of paper of where you want to be. Stick it up on your wall. Stick it up on your desk. Stick it up on your dresser. Stick it up on your mirror. Something that's going to remind you of where you want to be in 1 month, 3 months, 1 year from now. That will help you set the target of where you want to go. Because if you don't set these goals, you're going to be on a path that's got really no clear outcome of where you want to go. So the last part is your strategy. What are you going to do to set yourself apart? Now, when it comes to strategies, I'm a big believer in routines. When I say routines, I mean literally getting into a daily habit that you can practice regularly so then you can be better at a skill. We think about habits sometimes in a negative light because we think about people just being addicted to bad actions, but I believe that habits can also be attributed in a positive light as well. What is a positive habit you can get into to help you build more genuine relationships? I believe one thing you can do is to be intentional about having an informational interview every single week with a new person, with a new professional in your field. You can leverage LinkedIn. You could go to a professor's office hours. You could talk to a friend of yours whose parent works in the field that you're interested in working towards, or a family friend that you know works in the field that you're interested in working towards. If you set up one informational interview every single week, and by an informational interview, I want to be very clear. This is a conversation. This isn't an interview. You're not trying to get a job from this person. You're just trying to get knowledge about what this work is like. Set up one of those a week. I can promise you they're going to start making introductions for you. They're going to start helping you get to where you want to be. By the way, if your goals change over time, that's okay. That's totally okay. You can share with them how your goals have changed, and they're going to want to keep helping you over time. I'll give you a perfect example of this. As an entrepreneur, I set goals all the time. I have a board of mentors. I literally have about 50 to 100 mentors that I send once every 3 months an update of what's going on with the business. Here's the thing though, I've pivoted this business many, many times. Now, initially when I first got started, I was thinking to myself like, oh, well, they're my mentors. Like, if I tell them that I've pivoted, will they think I'm a total failure? Will they not want to help me anymore? What I found is that is absolutely not the case. They're always there to support me. Mentors that have been with me for 5+ years still give me guidance, still help make introductions, still help me out and support me as my mission has grown, as my goals have grown. That is the nature of mentoring relationships. That is the nature of relationships in general. You should keep your network up to date with what is going on in your world because they will want to see you succeed. But the key is that you ask them for something specific. When I meet with my mentors or when I send them an email, I ask for something very, very specific. I don't say, hey, if you know anybody in XYZ space, if you could introduce me, would love that. Why? Because it's not at the top of their mind. What I'll do is I'll physically go onto their LinkedIn profile, look at who they're connected with and say, hey, I noticed that you're connected with Jane Doe, John Doe, Shelby Doe, and Jenny Doe. I know that you may not be connected with all 4 of those people, but if you are connected with one of them, would you mind introducing me? Here's an email template that you could copy and paste to introduce me. Now I've made it extremely specific and easy for them to take an action step to help me out. And that is how you can continue to grow your relationships, your network, and build rapport with people. And just keep them in the loop of what's going on in your world. So I just want to be very clear. It's about building genuine relationships, and it's about when you're building those genuine relationships and then you're asking them for introductions or connecting with more people through those relationships, being very specific and making it as easy as possible for them to help you out. I really want to stress this. It's so important. Genuine networking. If you can take anything from this whole program, if it's genuine networking, and by genuine networking, I mean really listening, taking an active and keen interest in who you are speaking with, you are going to be set. You're going to be in a great position. Because at the end of the day, it's not your elevator pitch. It's not going to be anything about you that makes someone interested in you. It's going to be about your ability to listen to them. In fact, I can tell you multiple times where I didn't say a word in a conversation. I just nodded my head yes and asked questions about things that somebody else has said. And at the end of the conversation, whether that be 30 minutes or 60 minutes long, they said, man, Garrett, you are such a great conversationalist. Or, gosh, I feel like I just had such a great conversation with you. And the funniest thing about it is I didn't actually say a word. The point is this: people love to talk about themselves Why? Because people are really interested in things that they're interested in. People wouldn't choose to spend the time that they have on this earth in the way that they did unless they thought it was the most optimum way of spending their time. Therefore, things that interest them, things that they choose to spend their time on, are things that interest them and ultimately make you interesting to them because you've taken an interest in those actions and activities. I hope that makes sense. If you want to rewatch that, take that back 30 seconds because I think it's really important. People, ultimately, at the end of the day, people care about themselves. People care about things that they are interested in because they've chosen to spend the time that they have on those tasks. So with that said, I'm excited to jump in to our guest speaker this evening. Really, the whole point of this workshop is about genuine networking. By the way, if you have not connected with me on LinkedIn, please do. I'll add you to our LinkedIn group where we discuss different topics and just you can add different topics, ask any questions, and expand us to our entire Ambition in Motion network. Connect with me. I'll add you to the group. But yeah, I'm so excited to get started. Let's jump into our guest speaker this evening. Hey everybody, welcome to our workshop this evening. I'm so excited to dive into our topic of how to network in a genuine way. Really, this topic is all about how can we go out making the most of our networking efforts and just outreach when it comes to finding that job, finding that internship, just putting ourselves out there to make connections and not just do it in a transactional way, but really build deep connections that may go somewhere. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, what does it really matter if they don't end up offering me a job or an internship? Why should I really care if I build genuine relationships? And we've got an incredible guest with us here this evening to share with you all why building genuine relationships is important, even if it doesn't end up landing you the job or internship right away. We've got Pearl-Grace Pantaleone with us. She is the business development and marketing manager for Cornerstone General Contractors and is also the co-owner and entrepreneur at Luna Apartments. She has extensive experience in marketing, business development, and entrepreneurship, and has great insight on the topic of how to network in a genuine way. Pearl-Grace, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for the intro, Garrett. I'm excited that you asked me to be a guest on this podcast, as I'm really passionate about this subject. It goes well with my personality and kind of like my mission in life and through my career. So thank you.
That's super cool. So I'd love to start off with from college to where you're at today, how did you get into this type of work? How did you get into doing what you were doing? I'd love to know the story because I think sometimes we gloss over the nitty gritty things or the who played what kind of role in helping us get there. But I think for this specific topic of networking in a genuine way, I want you to go into that. Who'd you connect with that played a big role in helping you get to where you're at and paving your own path?
Yeah, thanks so much for asking that question. Networking definitely got me to where I am today. When I was younger, I wanted to be an anchor woman. So I spent a lot of time, in high school, working in yearbook and just doing a lot of journalism stuff. And I got my degree at University of Alaska Anchorage in journalism and public communications, thinking that I would be on TV. I had an internship, lined up because I was networking in college, talking to my professors, just trying to get engaged. And then once I had an internship and they offered me a job right out of college and I did it, I was like, this is not what I want to do. I spent my whole life, trying to become this, but it just, didn't really fit my personal values. I wanted to start a family young, and being a multimedia journalist in broadcast didn't match up with that.
Ooh.
And so
Hold on a second. I want to jump into that. I think that's a really relevant and powerful topic because I think that there's a lot of students who are here and they're hearing that and they're like, oh, interesting. I think as students maybe at 18 to 22 years old, we think to ourselves oh, it's all got to be about the career. How did you assess your value system for what was most important to you when it came to your career? And how did you determine how to propel which path forward?
Yeah. Actually, I had a lot of mentors. And I want to go back to when I was a junior in college, right? I was like, this is what I want to be. I have all this plan, and I was on that fast track until I talked to a counselor, mapping out my classes for my senior year, he was like, hey, are you involved in media? And I was like, no, should I? And so he brought me to the campus radio station and introduced me to everybody. And then I started volunteering, and then I eventually got a job to that. And when I was an intern at the TV station, I was engaged. I was like planning my wedding, right? So like a lot of things in my life were changing. And it wasn't until like I graduated and I signed that 3-year contract, you know, with the TV station, that I was like, oh man, I feel like kind of trapped in this, but this is what I want to do. I was the crime and safety reporter at the time. And in Alaska, back in 2014, that was like the highest rate for like high crimes, like murder and rape and all that stuff. And I was reporting on that. And I'm a pretty compassionate person. And it was really hard for me. And so I had to like reevaluate, is this what I want to do for like the rest of my life? Do I want to like be in media? And I feel like they were just kind of like using my network, you know, to get leads, to then boost their ratings, when I was just building my network to build deeper connections in the community, because like I love Alaska, I care about people, and I wanted to share their story. And those two weren't aligning for me. And so I reached out to my past professors, and I was like asking about different careers, right? And of course, use LinkedIn, use like Craigslist and everything like that to kind of like look for jobs. And there's two that I interviewed for. One was an ad agency, and then one was to be a marketer at an engineering firm. I interviewed for both on the same day. Interviewed for the ad agency first. And I kind of said, like, you know, I'm in broadcast media right now. It's high paced. I want to have a family young, and I just want like a good work-life balance. And the turning point in that interview was the person interviewing me said like, oh yeah, we're working 24/7. And I was like, okay. And then when I went to the engineering firm and talking with them, it was like a conversation. It was like super nice. Everyone was family oriented, and they really focused about the people. And so that's what sold me into that, and how I got into engineering, construction, architecture. I'm still using my degree. I still write. I still do media and business development. It's just kind of a different form. And I'm so glad that I took that jump. And, you know, when I was contemplating, like, should I jump ship? You know, I wanted to be an anchor woman for so long. Like, is it okay? And I was telling myself, it's okay, because I'm not happy here. I can still apply the things I've learned in college and my passion into this new job. And 7 years later, I love this industry. I'm in construction right now, and I've never been happier. I have 2 wonderful kids, been married for 7 years. And so it's crazy where life takes you, and kind of like who you know along the way too.
That's so fascinating. There's so many things that I want to dive deeper into. I want to dive in deeper into a lot of different things in what you've said. So there's a few things. So one, my sister is a meteorologist, and so she's so amped about weather and changing patterns. So I can definitely relate to this whole notion of like having to have a certain face, a certain demeanor when it comes to presenting any news, because for her, when like a hurricane comes or a tornado comes, she's like, we have a class 5 hurricane, people, this is incredible. And they're like, hey Zoe, so these people's lives are being changed right now, their homes are getting obliterated, so you need to like tone it down. I get it, it's exciting meteorologically, it's like very fascinating, that doesn't happen all the time, but we need to tone that a little bit down. So I totally, especially if you're having to do crime and like murders and rapes and stuff, that would be pretty depressing and sombering if you had to present it in like a lighthearted mood.
Yeah,
I would
absolutely.
imagine that would be stressful. But I think on to the point of how you leverage your professors. I think that's really awesome. I love the story component of it. I would imagine there's part of an identity crisis in your story, because you're thinking to yourself, like, I wanted to be an anchor woman for so long. I wanted to lead the news. I wanted to be presenting on the, front lines and all these things. And then boom, like you change. And everybody you told up to that point in time in your life, you're like, I want to be an anchor woman. I want to be an anchor woman. I want to be an anchor woman. And then you're like, yeah, I bet you felt immediately like tail between my legs. I don't want to be an anchor woman. And that, I would imagine, was a difficult pill to swallow, because your like identity is being, dissociated. But I think what you're kind of conveying is that was the greatest decision you've ever made, because it allowed you to realize that something else was out there. And so I think there's a lot of students that are feeling potentially this stress of, oh shoot, I am in this identity crisis of, I thought I wanted to do this all the way, and now I'm in it and I realize there are some things that don't align with my value system. If I change, will everybody think I'm a failure? I would imagine that's probably something that's going through their minds. So I'd love to learn your thoughts. What advice do you have for students that are maybe going through that mentality right now of like, oh geez, like if I switch, like what will people think about me type of mentality? How do you help them kind of overcome that? How did you overcome that?
Yeah, dang, that's a really powerful question. I feel like it took a while for me to overcome that. I'd have to give a lot of kudos to my husband, who was my fiance at the time, who really encouraged me to like keep trying. Like when I signed that contract, I knew I didn't want to be there, but I did it anyways, right? And he just encouraged me to just try it. Because I have this opportunity, try it, see if you like it. If you don't, that's okay. That is totally okay if you don't like it, and if things don't work out. If you use that as an experience to grow and to like find yourself, I think that is really powerful. And so there are a lot of tears, there are a lot of months of like doubt and everything like that. But Alaska is a really small community, and there's like this saying, there's like 7 degrees of separation. In Alaska, there's like 1. So I just like, leaned on my community for support. When I was talking with my professors, I would sit in their office and I would be like crying, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like what I wanted to do all my life and it's not working out. And they're like, it's okay. And they shared, with me similar experiences that they had in high school, even in their like young adult life, that this dream job that they had and they finally got it wasn't their dream job. And to learn that it's okay.
Yeah, I love that. I think what's really cool about that is it's so empowering to realize like it's okay to switch roles and to not like expecting that your life and career is going to play out to the exact proportions of your 18, 19-year-old self for the rest of your life. Very low, very low. I
Yeah.
think we all can recognize that even as 18, 19-year-olds. But I think when it comes to, I don't know, rubber meeting the road, I guess you might say, it's difficult when the plan doesn't work out and we have to make a life pivot.
Yeah.
But I think what you're conveying is that there's so much growth and learning that comes with it. And that's the whole point of life, is that we learn and grow throughout those scenarios. But on the topic of today, which is how to network in a genuine way, you leverage your professors to open up doors and your network, your community, to open up doors that you didn't realize were even open. And I think that's a really cool component to it. Because I talked about before, I've heard students say things to me before, like, oh, well, if they can't help me land that job or internship, why should I spend time networking with them? Why should I focus my energy on them? But I think what you're conveying is that there was a lot of people in your life that maybe weren't clearly providing that path to jobs or internships when you thought you wanted to be an anchor woman. Now, all of a sudden, are opening up doors as you're switching and changing gears and paths. And you would have not had that kind of rapport with them unless you were building genuine relationships with them when you did not need them. Is that correct?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And to kind of like segue from like kind of like identity crisis to like networking. When I knew I didn't want to be reporting and I was looking for other jobs, right? I was doing a little bit of both. I was like networking to find jobs So like as a reporter, you have to contact the PR person of an organization to then get an interview within, the company. So I would be networking with those PR people because at the time I wanted to be in PR. And when we would connect, and we're just waiting for the shoot to set up, I would just be talking to them about like, hey, how did you get your job? Do you like your job? And just asking them kind of questions. And that's how I kind of got that interview with the PR firm, the same day as the engineering firm, is because I was networking, excuse me. One of the questions you asked before this was like, how do I define, or what does genuine networking mean to me? It just means like being your authentic self, like having a real conversation. You're being relaxed. You don't really have like an agenda that you're pushing on a person for business purposes, right? You're just building a connection. And I love meeting new people. And so I love talking with them and, just making new friends. And so I don't really view networking as like transactional, like, oh, I could use you later on. Like I view you as like, oh, I met a new friend, and so I think when I was reporting, and to this day, anytime I meet a person, it's like, hey, I met a new friend. Let's talk and see where we have similarities.
On that same note, because I think you bring up a really great point, we don't want to think about how are they pawns in our chess match of life, but I want to ask the question of how do you stay in touch with people? How do you keep them in the loop? Because I think that happens all the time. Like I meet tons of different people every single day. And, some people, they come into your life and they come out of your life. And, we don't actually know why. How do you stay up? How do you follow up? How do you keep the tabs on the important relationships going?
Yeah, I would say like I'm pretty active in my community. And I'm a part of a lot of different organizations. Like I'm part of the Chamber of Commerce, I'm part of SMPS, I sit on the board, AGC, like I always dip my toes in those different organizations. And I started doing that, outside of college, just because like I love education, I love learning, I love to grow. And so seeing those people like on a regular basis, connecting with them on LinkedIn, and the more you like and comment and engage on social media, especially like LinkedIn, professionally, you see those people at the top of your feed. And so like that's how like you stay connected to those people that you're engaged with. And so yeah, it's just various areas of staying connected, whether like you have a reoccurring meeting for an organization, or there's like a networking luncheon. I've met a lot of people through networking luncheons for the chamber, or social media.
That's really cool. That's really powerful. I love how you bring up, well, there's two things that I really noticed in that. So one was that you were very intentional about what communities you are active in. So it's not just meeting people for the sake of meeting people. Like almost every one of those scenarios, whether that be the Society for Marketing Professional Services, SMPS, or AGC, or your local Chamber of Commerce, like they're all very intentionally selected groups of people that have recurring meetings that you're going to be constantly be interacting with on a monthly basis, on a regular basis. So you're constantly going to be building those bonds and that rapport over time, which I think you did a really great job of. But as a student, you might be thinking to yourself like, well, shoot, I'm still figuring it out. Maybe there are professional, there are probably professional associations that those students can participate in and partake in, maybe not necessarily with fellow professionals, but with fellow students that are interested in similar paths as you are, because you know that eventually one day, many of these people are probably going to be in the same career path, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And in college, I was pretty involved with student life and leadership, student media, the radio station, and sports. So I would regularly, go to those meetings, and we would have networking nights with people in those industries, right? So I got to like meet those people that I would eventually work with. And then I stayed involved with the university even after I graduated. and I co-founded the UAA College of Arts and Sciences alumni chapter. And that was the largest chapter at UAA. And I'm also on the board for the Alumni Association in general. And so staying involved with the university means a lot, to students, because it meant a lot to me.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really interesting. I want to transition a little bit to this topic of practice, like tangentially transition, but the topic of practicing our networking skills. Like for a lot of us, we've been cooped in our house for the last year, socially isolated. A lot of our social skills have not been flexed for quite a while. And I would love to learn, just like, is networking a skill that you always have, or is there a warm-up process? And if there is a warm-up process, what warm-up process do you use to kind of like acclimate yourself and get yourself mentally, physically, emotionally prepared for meeting new people?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say when I was younger, I was definitely an introvert and I was afraid to talk to people. And I knew that, right? And I wanted to challenge myself at a young age. And that's why I wanted to become an anchor woman, because you're like presenting, you're in front of a camera. And I wanted to work on just those skills of talking, right? And I think even to this day, like I'm nervous, like even before this call, right? It's just you and I talking, right? And I kind of had like prepare myself, I just took a deep breath and just said like, it's okay. You're just talking, just reminding myself that it's okay and you're safe. And it's okay to like mess up. And I think, just practicing it more often, that gave me the confidence. And it's definitely like in my personality, to meet people and connect with them. And so the more I did it, the more I got comfortable and, I was efficient at it. But yeah, coming out of this, pandemic with things opening up and everything like that, there's a lot of anxiety, no matter like what you were going through. It was a pretty tough year and it still is a tough year. So how do you like reintegrate and network with people? And again, it's just like practicing. It's not jumping in all at once, like cutting it cold turkey and just doing it. You have to dip your toes into what is comfortable for you, and your level of awareness. So I would say like, keep practicing it, and just be aware of yourself and what you're comfortable with, but don't overthink like, oh, am I like making eye contact? Oh, am I doing things weird with my hands? Just be authentic and just have a conversation with that person.
I love the notion of keep practicing. I think that makes a ton of sense. Somebody once recently told me that was an introvert. And so I think while you brought up this idea of being introverted, that I thought was a really cool idea for just like equipping themselves mentally and emotionally for a networking event is maybe the day or two before maybe a big networking event's coming up, a real live event where we're about to meet a bunch of people where we know, because as introverts, we are going to be emotionally drained from doing such a thing. Going out and having some easy wins. And by that, I mean calling your friends, meeting with friends, doing what you can with like a very easy warm-up phase where you're like getting to meet with people, socially interact, socially work that muscle. But with people where there are zero consequences, where if you mess up, it does not matter. You can get all the bleeps and blurps out of the way, and then you can sleep on it, let your body recharge. And then when you go into that networking event, you've already got something relatively recent to kind of count on for when it comes to preparing yourself for what the social event's going to be like. Would that be like a good example of how to practice something like that?
Yeah, that's definitely a good example of how to practice that. I've done some workshops with college students on like how to network. And so there was like maybe like 10 professionals and then 10 students, and then we had food, right? And so they showed you like how to hold your food and hold it in the left hand so you have your right hand available to shake hands, and where to put your name tag, right above your right hand so people can like directly see that, right? And so we would do like, instead of like mock interviews, we would do like mock networking, right, to just practice. Because for some people who aren't used to that, and this is new to them, they might, just get shocked and like freeze, not know what to do, or just like walk away, right? Fight or flight. And so we were practicing that for like an hour to get people to be more comfortable with it. And you're just, asking people questions and seeing where you have connections and stuff. Another tip they had was to like identify hotspots, right? So the hotspot would be at the check-in. There's a lot of people there. You could talk to people there. Another hotspot is by the food. Everyone's getting food. You can, chat with people as you're like putting food on your plate, or stand there and just chat with people as they're walking by, the drinks. But one thing that I did in the beginning, as I started as a marketer at the engineering firm, not knowing anything, like I just had a buddy. I would bring a buddy. Then I would be more comfortable than going like totally solo, because I feel like that's a lot of pressure, especially for a young woman. And I was like in the oil and gas industry. So there's a lot of like older, men there, and there's hardly any women. So I would bring my husband, who's like very introverted, and, like, even though he wouldn't really talk, like, I just like felt comfortable that there was just someone there on my side, And so like, and then as I kept doing it, I, developed friends. And so like, instead of my husband coming, it would be like another friend that I met at a networking event, and we would just have like a buddy system, right? Another, I know I'm like talking a lot of tips, but one more tip that I kind of developed myself was like to like have a goal when you go to a networking event. And my goal is to like make one like deep connection, whether that's like getting a business card, like, wow, we can actually work together. Like I work at a construction firm, and maybe I met someone who's a sub-consultant or a specialty. And we connected, and we found out that both our kids play soccer. I'm like, I think that is a deep connection, because we found an area of similarities. And so I just go in, with that goal, rather than like collecting as many business cards as you can, or many names as you can. Just find one person that you can connect with.
I love that. I love the idea of goals. I will say this. I wanted to challenge the idea of the buddy system. And I only say this. So now one thing, obviously I'm a white man. So there's a lot of unconscious bias that I have that I don't necessarily I'm not necessarily aware of when it comes to networking events. But I know that when I go to a networking event by myself, or rather when I have a friend, they become a crutch. I feel obligated to talk to them. But if I know my focus is to get myself out of the comfort zone and just meet a bunch of new people, going solo has been really effective for me, because then I get invited to like, oh, hey, we're doing this after party. We're going to go here at this location. I don't have to then confer with my buddy to be like, hey, can I get a +2? They're like, it's easier to potentially identify additional opportunities when you're riding solo. So I will say this, and also when I have a buddy, they almost become a crutch for like not meeting other people, just because I'm like, oh, like I can just easily turn to you and have a conversation. So that's my only challenge on the buddy system. But also obviously if you're a woman in a very male dominated industry, there are social constructs that make that potentially uncomfortable. And so something that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up that challenge, because that is definitely what I experienced when I first did that, right? And like I said, like you're not diving in this like all at once. Like that was my comfort level at the time, to like bring a buddy, that was my husband. Then slowly it was a buddy that was a new person, and then slowly it wasn't a buddy at all. And at one point, the transition between having a buddy and nobody at all was that like we would show up together, right? We would be there together, but then we would like go separate ways. And say like if there was a conversation that wasn't going well, or we wanted to get out of for some reason, right? We always had that buddy to kind of like rescue us. And, like either like, oh, I see my friend, I have to go over there. Or your friend would be aware and kind of like, rescue you. So like that is the kind of buddy system that you could have as well. Networking, or it could be positive too. Like, like you go your separate ways, and you can see your buddy is kind of like struggling. maybe they don't want to get out of that conversation, but they're having trouble like having it progress the way they want. So you can have your buddy come in and say like, oh, Pearl-Grace, like you did this one thing last week. Can you tell me more about that? I'm sure this person will be interested in hearing it, and kind of like coach them along, those conversations. So there's definitely pros and cons to having buddies going with you to networking events, but just making sure that you guys know your expectations of each other, right? And you have your goals, and you just are more aware of what's happening.
Totally. No, I love that. That makes sense. Thanks for clarifying that. I think that makes a ton of sense. I loved your tip on going to like the food location. I can distinctly recall, I think one of my favorite, for any networking event, I think my favorite food kind of situation, maybe COVID, it's not the most friendly anymore, but
Yeah.
charcuterie boards.
Yes.
Freaking love charcuterie boards because you can combine different cheeses and crackers and pickles and meats, like all together. I was at a networking event where there was a whole table of just like just tons of different like almonds and stuff like that. But it was such an easy place to network because I'm a foodie. I love to eat. I live to eat. I don't eat to live. And so I could go to people and be like, okay, this pimento cheese, this cracker, this pickle, try it. I think it's pretty darn tasty. And then it just starts a conversation from there. And I know it sounds super silly, but it's fun to play with food, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not super silly at all. Like food is definitely a conversation starter, like you can, I don't know, if you're at a buffet or whatever, you can be like, oh, what is this? And just like that just opens up the door to talk to that person.
Yeah.
So I think it's awesome being by the food or having food in your hands and talking about that, right?
Yeah, totally. There's power in breaking bread.
Yes.
So I want to transition to one final topic here as it pertains to networking in a genuine way, and that is the topic of vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to learn, what are your thoughts on vulnerability, opening up to somebody else? When is the right time to do it? Is there ever a right time to do it? And if you do it, what can we anticipate from that relationship moving forward?
Yeah, definitely. I think vulnerability is very powerful when you're connecting with somebody, and there's definitely a certain time and place for that, right? You wouldn't want to like do it in a crowded room where everybody's like laughing or whatever, because if that person's in the middle of the conversation, someone comes in, that can be awkward, right? So that's definitely something like you want to do if you like step outside and you're like really connecting, right? Like and you just want to step outside and have it more private, or like in a follow-up meeting or something like that. But like when you're initially networking with people, you're just getting to know them in general, right? You can dive deep into details and stuff, but you just want to ask them questions. But when you do reach that point, I think it's a level of trust that you have mutually together. And if that person is comfortable even being vulnerable with you, some people are never vulnerable, and some people are vulnerable right off the get-go, so it's just being aware of like yourself, of them, and your surroundings.
I love the example you gave. I think I'm chuckling because I think of like a TV show where somebody, I can't even remember maybe it was a Saturday Night Live bit, I can't remember, but it's like there's a networking event, everybody's chuckling, having a good time, and then one person comes in like in the middle of like a big laughing joke, and like, oh, hey, I just got diagnosed with cancer. You're like, whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. That went deep quick. So
Yes.
it's like it's like, man, everyone told me that vulnerability is going to build deeper connections, and everybody seems to run away from me. It's like, well, wrong time, wrong place. So, but yeah, I love the concept of like one-on-one in a scenario where you're really feeling like you're connecting. You can really go deep and share some intimate details, because if you do, and you're with somebody that you trust and you feel comfortable with, that can build a bond that can last much longer than the networking event. Like if you were that person that was willing to be vulnerable, you were going to stand out in their eyes way more significantly than people who just talk about the superficial high level fluff.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
likewise, they're going to stand out in your mind because you were willing to share with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely believe there are different like levels of vulnerability. Like you don't have to say like, oh, this is like my life story, right? Like vulnerability just means sharing your like feelings and letting your guard down. And it could be as simple as like, hey, how are you feeling about tonight? And maybe if you're not really feeling it, you're like, oh yeah, I'm not really feeling it tonight, but I'm here anyways, and I want to meet new people. I think that is another level of vulnerability, and that person could be like, wow, they're honest in that moment. They didn't really, they're not really feeling this night, but they told me anyways. And so I feel like, something as simple as that can connect with people as well.
Very cool. Awesome. This has been a really interesting topic in just terms of how to genuinely network and how to build genuine relationships. I loved your vulnerability and you're willing to share your story of going from wanting to be an anchor woman to doing what you're doing now in marketing and business development, and just the tips that you gave, I felt like were really relevant and pertinent to the students that are in this process right now. Do you have any final tips, any final points that you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, definitely. Just like believe in yourself and just continue to grow. When you are talking with people and networking with them, just be very kind, especially now, because you never know, like if you'll meet them later down the road, or if they will be impactful when you have a turning moment.
Yeah. Oh, and I just realized I had a total lopsided moment. So part of what we do in these workshops, we actually ask the audience to answer questions, and I totally forgot to do this during the interview. So I'm going to ask 3 rapid fire questions right now to the audience. So the first question is, what was one of the biggest tips that Pearl-Grace gave in this interview that you feel like you can start applying to your networking right now? Post in the comment section. Would love to learn about that. The second question is on vulnerability. I would love to learn, when was the time that you shared a vulnerable story, you opened up to somebody and it actually worked out? It built a deeper connection with the person that you were chatting with. You don't have to give the full details of the story, but you can give like the high levels of like, hey, I was at a networking event. I stepped outside to take a breath of fresh air, met this person, and we ended up having an hour-long conversation about whatever. And you know what? We're still in touch today. It could be something as simple as that. Would love to learn about that. Post in the comment section. And then the last question I have to ask is, Pearl-Grace, I'd love to throw it off to you. What question would you love to ask the students, if you could?
Putting me on the spot.
I'm putting you on the spot right now.
Yeah. I would ask them, when you're networking, what is your goal when you go into the room? And why?
Great question, Pearl-Grace. What is your goal for networking and why when you go into a room? I love it. Post in the comment section. 3 awesome questions. This is very different than the way we normally ask the questions, and I love it. So final question for you, Pearl-Grace. How can our audience learn more about you? I know we talked about LinkedIn. Would you be okay if our students watching this connected with you on LinkedIn?
Oh yeah,
Are there
absolutely.
any other ways that our students can connect with you or learn more about your work?
Sure. Yeah. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I also have a professional Facebook page, Pearl-Grace Pantaleone Professional, that you can follow me at. And if you wanted to reach out to me, you can also email you, and I'll give Garrett that information.
Perfect. Awesome. Pearl-Grace, thanks for being here. This was awesome. Students, thank you all for being here. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. I look forward to seeing you at our next workshop. See you, everybody.